Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Sorry for the delay on the video. I got the Rona. But like the Newt in Monty Python,
I got better.
So here I am back again with another episode of my top 50 games of all time list, and today we're talking about numbers 20 through 11. And if you tuned in for the other videos in this series, you'll know that I've been doing a giveaway for one of these games at the end of each episode. So if you want to know what the next 10 games are on my top 50 games of all time list, and you want to get entered to win a sweet giveaway, then might I suggest... Hi, I'm Alex from Might I Suggest a Game, a channel devoted to helping you find your perfect board game. Today, like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the next 10 games on my top 50 games of all time list. But before we do that, let's announce the winner from my last video. So without further ado, to pick the winner of a brand new copy of Three Sisters, ladies and gentlemen, the comment picker. Alright, congratulations to Nicholas Bruyette. I hope that you like Rollin' Rights because you got a fresh one coming your way. Please email me at mightisuggestegame@gmail.com so that I can confirm your information and get your game to you ASAP. And if you're not Nicholas Bruyette, don't worry, there's still 2 more chances to win a game on my top 50 games of all time list. Really, there's only 2 steps. First off, you gotta subscribe to this channel and hit that little bell button so you get notified when I post new content. And second, you just gotta comment a wine glass emoji on the video. Plus, you can get a bonus entry if you suggest a game that you think I should play based on the games that I like. All of the comments so far have been super awesome. I've added a ton of games to my must-play list, and I can't wait to see what suggestions you all come up with for this next round of games. Anyways, let's jump into it. Will one of these games on my top 50 games list of all time be the perfect game for you? Let's find out, shall we? Alright, number 20 on my top 50 games of all time list is Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade from Japanime Games. Now this semi-cooperative deck builder for 1 to 4 players is probably not in a lot of people's top 20, and I'm totally fine with that. See, I understand that this game is pretty niche and definitely appeals to people who care about the show, but let me tell you, I'm a huge Cowboy Bebop fan, so as soon as I saw this one, I knew I needed to check it out. But like I mentioned before with Gudetama, I'm always a little bit wary of licensed games because I feel like sometimes they can just have the theme pasted on, and that's no fun, especially for people who really care about the theme. But I got to try Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade for the first time at Origins last year, and I'm happy to report it was a great experience. In the game, you can play as one of the 4 characters that call the Bebop home, each of which has special abilities and special cards that play to their specific strengths. Now, I really love this element because it feels like each character plays totally differently. Jet, for example, can take a lot of hits physically, whereas Ed is really good at gathering information, both of which are important in different aspects of the game, so each character requires a different strategy to play. I also love that the game is semi-cooperative because honestly in the show, these bounty hunters are semi-cooperative. I mean, they're generally around to watch each other's backs and make sure that they can all complete a mission together, but there are so many points throughout the show that everyone's just looking out for number 1, and that totally manifests itself in the gameplay.
You know the first rule of combat? Shoot them before they shoot you.
The gameplay itself is fairly straightforward. It's mostly just a drafting and deck building game where you're trying to defeat different enemies, but the cards that you draft have different synergies on them, which will work better as they interact with different characters. All in all, I think that for people that haven't seen the show, this is a solid intro deck builder with some interesting elements that lead to some tough decisions, but for people who are fans of the show, this game is a must-have. I was a sucker and even went in for the custom sleeves. It's hard to pass up a good component. Anyways, if you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop, stop what you're doing and go watch it right now. It's such a classic and I would highly recommend it even if you're not into anime. And if you have seen the show, even the kind of weird live action one on Netflix, then you should definitely check this game out. So if you're looking for a super thematic deck builder where everybody's kind of on the same team until one person is declared the winner at the end, then might I suggest Cowboy Bebop Space Serenade. The next one on my list, number 19, is Vegas the Dice Game. Now this one really took me by surprise because I don't really love push your luck games and I don't really love dice games, and yet this push your luck dice game for 2 to 5 players made it in my top 20. But then when I started to think about it, I realized I really do like this game, and let me tell you why. Vegas the Dice Game, or Las Vegas, or whatever you want to call it, is just a really solid game that's super easy to teach, super easy to pick up, and actually quite strategic once you jump into it. In the game, each player gets 8 of these colorful dice and gets to chuck them at the beginning of their turn and see what happens. Now, in the middle of the table, there are 6 casinos labeled 1 through 6 that you'll be vying for control over throughout the game. On your turn, when you roll your dice, you'll have to choose all of one number of dice and place that on the corresponding casino. So if you roll 3 4s, you can take those 3 4s and place them on the number 4 casino. Now, each of these casinos has a different monetary value associated with it. That monetary value is determined at the beginning of the round, and it's totally random, which means that some casinos can be worth more than others in different rounds. If at the end of the round you have the most die of one number on a casino, then you win the most expensive bill on that casino. Some casinos have multiple bills on them, which means that even if you come in second, you could still get a few winnings. Once each round is over and everyone has collected their winnings, you'll add new money to each casino and start rolling again. Then, at the end of the game, whoever has the highest value bills wins. Now, there's a couple more rules about ties and tiebreakers, but really what you need to know is that this game is what a push your luck game should be. In my opinion, that is. It's pretty fast and it's really easy to learn, which means that the stakes for winning aren't really that high, even though you're going back and forth for hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of dice games and push your luck games where if you don't roll what you need, you get punished for it pretty heavily. But in this game, if you don't roll what you want, oh well, maybe you'll get really lucky next round. It's just like a gambling game at the casino, and in the same way, it can be kind of addicting, so be careful. Anyways, I've heard that this game is kind of hard to find these days, so if you do see a copy around, you should snag it, because this one is one of my favorites. So if you're looking for a really quick push your luck dice game that's great for new and veteran players alike, especially if you love chucking a bunch of dice on the table, then might I suggest Vegas the Dice Game. The next one on my list, number 18, is an absolute classic. It's the Castles of Burgundy. I mean, what is there to say about the Castles of Burgundy? It's a classic Euro game with that old-timey art where you're building a kingdom with different hex tiles and trying to maximize your point total. This game's got tile placement and drafting, and it has a great dice mitigation system that sets the gold standard for these types of games. Now, Castles of Burgundy plays up to 4 players. I really like it at 3. I've been playing it a lot on Board Game Arena, which is especially nice because you don't have to set the whole thing up. Which brings me to a couple gripes I have about this game. Usually when I bring this game and some other newer games to a game night, nobody really wants to play Castles of Burgundy because all the other ones have cooler, flashier themes. That's not to say the classic building your best duchy is a bad theme per se, it's just kind of played out at this point.
Oh, that's a spicy hot take.
The second thing is the setup is kind of annoying. The Castles of Burgundy has a ton of different types of tiles that each need to be sorted into their own stacks, and if you just have the base game box, when you open it up, those tiles are everywhere. Now I got an organizer for mine and that definitely helps a little bit, but I will say playing this one online is a way more streamlined experience. Now I know I'm not the only one that complains a little bit about the art and the theme, and I know this because they just finished a campaign on GameFound for a super extra deluxeified version of Castles of Burgundy. Now the base pledge being something like 80 euros was a little too rich for my blood. I mean, this is game number 18, not game number 1. But I hope the people that did back it enjoy it, and send me some pictures while you're at it. In the meantime, I'll be playing my drab version of it because the gameplay is just so good. Now, I talked about this game a little bit in my holiday gift guide as the natural next step for someone who's really into Catan. I think this is a natural progression because if you haven't played Catan, you might look at the Castles of Burgundy board and get a little bit overwhelmed. But if you have played Catan, you'll probably recognize things like the theme, the hex tiles, the rolling of the dice, etc., which will at least give you a little bit of a jumping off point, so you're not starting from ground zero. I love Castles of Burgundy. I think it's such a solid game from start to finish, and I love that there's so many different paths to victory. So if you're interested in playing a classic Euro game with some super solid gameplay that totally makes you understand why it's in the upper echelon of OG board games, then might I suggest the Castles of Burgundy. Alright, number 17 on my list is one of my favorite small box games of all time. It's The Mind from Pandasaurus Games. The Mind is a super simple cooperative card game for 2 to 4 players where all you're trying to do is place your cards in ascending order in the middle of the table. That can't be that hard, right? Well, here's the twist. You're not allowed to talk at all, which means you gotta get those brain waves really working together if you're gonna win this one.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? No, no, no!
No!
In the first round, everybody only starts with 1 card. But as the rounds move on, each person gets an extra card each round. Which means by the time you're at round number 10, that's right, you've got 10 cards each to work with. Now, if you place 1 card out of order, don't worry. You'll have a few lives to work with, and you can earn a few extra lives throughout the game, depending on how long you survive. And there's also this thing called the Ninja Star. That'll allow you to get rid of some cards when you guys are stuck. But other than that, this game is about pure concentration and telepathic communication. And I just love it. I've given this game as a wedding present to a bunch of people because I think this game is the purest form of communication. If you really know your partner and you're on the same page, that makes this game a lot easier and super fun to play. Liz and I played this one on our anniversary a couple years back, and we finally made it to the final level, which we took as a great sign for the year to come. Now, I also want to give a shout out to its follow-up game, The Mind Extreme, which I actually think is a little bit more accessible than the original Mind. It is a little bit easier. We've won this one a couple of times, and the reason why is because instead of having a deck that goes from 1 to 100 all in the same color, you've got 2 decks that go from 1 to 50 in red and in white. That means in the middle of the table, instead of 1 pile, there's 2 piles. 1 for red cards, 1 for white cards. But because there's less of each one to deal with, somehow in my mind it feels a little bit easier. The Mind Extreme also introduces rounds where you have to play all of your cards face down, and those rounds can be really fun because then you get to reveal the pile one by one to see if you actually did it. And when you do, it feels so good. Anyways, I just love this game. I love the tension that it brings with such a simple concept. The box is so small that it fits in any vacation bag, and I'll be playing this one to determine the strength of my relationship for years to come. So if you really want to know how good your communication skills are, especially your non-verbal ones, and you want a small box card game that can be fun for the whole family, then might I suggest The Mind. Alright, next on my list, number 16 is Lost Ruins of Arnak. Now this game is one of the newer ones on my list, but it has climbed up the rankings as soon as I realized that worker placement is one of my favorite mechanics. Now this game utilizes worker placement and deck building and card drafting and a lot of different mechanics, but I think at its core, it's a really tight worker placement game where every move counts. And when I say every move counts, I'm not joking. You've only got 2 workers to place on the board, so you really have to place them wisely, or else you're gonna end up 1 coin too short to take that expedition that you wanted, or 1 gem too short to move up on the research track, etc, etc. The decisions in this game can be agonizing, and it's really tough to make every move feel like you're maximizing your potential. But when you do, oh, it's such a good feeling. When you have just enough resources to get that perfect combo, or make a move that nobody was expecting you to do, or move all the way up on the research track in 1 turn. It's just so satisfying, and that's what I love about Lost Ruins of Arnak. I've tried playing this one on Board Game Arena a little bit, but I feel like this is one where you need the table and you need to be able to look across the whole board and see what other people are doing so that you can plan your strategy a few turns ahead. You've always got to be looking forward in this game so that you don't get caught having to take actions that are suboptimal. Anyways, Lost Ruins of Arnak is a really awesome worker placement efficiency puzzle, something that I really enjoy in a game. I will say there's a lot of analysis paralysis that happens, but if you're okay with the game going a little bit longer, then you should definitely check this one out. I'll also add that I don't usually do expansions, but I did get the Expedition Leaders expansion for Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I totally recommend it to anyone who enjoys this game. It makes all the characters in the game asymmetrical, and gives them these little special powers that give you leeway to come up with a few different strategies on your way to victory. I personally love a good asymmetrical power, so if you're into that and you like this game, you should definitely check out that expansion. But if you haven't played the base game and you're looking for a really tight worker placement game that has some really great components, really cool art, and some really solid gameplay where you feel like every decision counts, then might I suggest Lost Ruins of Arnak. Alright, number 15 on my top 50 games of all time list is Grand Austria Hotel. Now I'll tell you, this one has a very special place in my heart because it's one of the very first Euro games that I ever played. That nostalgic feeling from when I first started getting into games always comes back to me when I open this box, and for that alone, I love this game. Now you may have heard a little bit about this game in a previous video that I did about games that I like that my partner does not like. Liz is notoriously against Grand Austria Hotel, and it's mostly because she wishes it was a little bit less Grand Austria Hotel and more Grand Budapest Hotel. I mean, it's hard to argue with the aesthetics of Wes Anderson. But, kind of like Castles of Burgundy, if you can get past the art, the game itself is super solid. Now, I did mention before that I'm not a huge fan of dice games, and yet here's another dice game in my top 20, so maybe I actually do like dice games. Who knows? But anyways, one of the reasons why I really like this game is because there's so much going on. You gotta collect coffee and strudel and wine for your customers that are coming into your cafe, and then when you complete their orders, you can put them into your hotel. And you have a little efficiency puzzle going on there. Plus, you're also hiring different staff members to try to increase the potency of your actions, all while trying to please the Emperor and make sure that he looks down in favor on your hotel. It feels like there's so many things to keep track of that on your first play, you might have your head spinning a little bit. But I promise you it gets better. As someone who likes planning their turns way in advance, this game can be a little bit tricky because at the end of the day, you're up to a big dice roll. But again, in this dice game, there's a lot of opportunities for mitigation, which means that even if you don't roll exactly what you're looking for, you'll still probably find some sort of action that'll work for you. I will say that maybe because of the art or the theme or the amount of time it takes to play, I don't get this one to the table as often as I wish I did. But every time I do, I'm reminded how awesome of a game this is. I mean, if you can manage to keep all of your tracks straight, your hotel booked, and the Emperor happy all at the same time, I feel like you deserve to win this one anyways. So if you're looking for a really fun Euro game about running your own hotel, and you need to scratch that ADHD itch of having a bunch of things going on at once, then might I suggest Grand Austria Hotel. Alright, the next one on my list, number 14, is Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Now, when I first heard about this game, I knew it was going to be a match made in heaven. I mean, I like Castles of Mad King Ludwig, I really like Between Two Cities, and so this game being a combination of the two really caught my fancy. And I was so happy when I finally got the chance to play it, and I was totally right. This game is awesome, and out of those three games, it's definitely my favorite. Now, I still think Castles of Mad King Ludwig and Between Two Cities have their own special place in my collection, but Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig is a favorite to bring out with a bunch of people at game night because it plays up to 7 players. And I talked about this a little bit before with Cowboy Bebop, but I love semi-cooperative games, and this one is a great example of the semi-cooperative genre. In Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, you are placing tiles and building a castle with the player on your left and the player on your right, which means that you need to work together with them in order to make sure that both castles are scoring a lot of points. Just like in Castles of Mad King Ludwig, there's a bunch of different rooms in the game that have different scoring conditions, and just like Between Two Cities, you'll draft 2 tiles on your turn and decide which castle each of those tiles is going to go in. I love that this game is semi-cooperative because that means that it's really easy to teach new players, especially when you combine them with people that have already played it. Usually I just intersperse the veterans around the table so that each newbie has at least one person who knows what they're talking about to consult with. Even though the iconography in the game is small and a little bit hard to read, I feel like the types of rooms are thematic enough where a lot of it's self-explanatory, and once you've played it once or twice, it all starts to come together. I really love this game. I love tile placement and drafting mechanics, and this one has one of my favorite systems in any game. Plus, there's this really cool scoring app called the King Steward, which I talked about in my video that I made for this one, that makes scoring a breeze and brings this game even higher up my list. So if you want a game with great player interaction where you can work together with your neighbors to build some funky castles and have a great time semi-cooperatively, then might I suggest Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Number 13 on my list is the only dexterity game in my top 50, but it's there for a reason. It's Clask. Now, I could try to explain Clask as a table-sized mix between foosball and air hockey, but I think the BGG description does it the most justice. Use magnets to push a ball into a goal, but beware of falling in yourself. And that's pretty much the game. In Clask, you have these magnetic pawns that you'll be moving around the table, trying to knock the yellow ball into your opponent's goal. Seems simple enough, right? But scoring a goal isn't the only way you can score points in this game. There are also 3 magnetic pieces in the middle of the board that can get stuck to your pawn throughout the game, and if you ever get 2 of those pieces stuck to you, your opponent gets a point. Also, if you're whipping your pawn around there and you happen to lose control and you cannot regain control with the magnet underneath the table, your opponent will also get a point. And lastly, if you're moving around and you accidentally fall into the whole space that is your goal, that is called a clask, and your opponent also gets a point. So as you can see, scoring goals isn't the only way you can score points in this game, and that added layer of difficulty really makes the game as strategic as it is dexterous. All you're really doing is moving this magnetic piece back and forth, but you just have to be really aware of your surroundings so that you don't get got.
I mean, I know I'm gonna get got, but I'm gonna get mine more than I get got though.
Anyways, Clask is just a great game. It plays really well outside, at a picnic, on a cooler, or even just on your kitchen table. It's a really fun 1v1 duel, one of my favorite 2-player games of all time, and you can even make it competitive and have a tournament for your next game night. So if you're yearning for the nostalgia of a foosball or an air hockey table, but you want a game that you can take with you to your friend's game night, then might I suggest Clask. Well, I guess this section of my top 50 is where all the drab-looking Euros go, because number 12 on my list is Yokohama. Now, okay, maybe that's being a little harsh. I don't think Yokohama is as drab-looking as Castles of Burgundy, for example. But I will say, once you put this one out on the table, if you know what's going on at first glance, you're a better person than me. Yokohama is a really awesome worker placement game that plays from 2 to 4 players. It's one of my favorite worker placement games because it uses this really cool action planning system. In the game, you'll have to place your worker cubes on different locations that each have their different powers. The more worker cubes you have on that location, the more powerful that action will be. So you really have to plan out how many workers will be on each space, because you can only put a maximum of 2 on there each turn. Once you place your workers, then you'll move your merchant to one of those locations and take that action. Your merchant can only move through spaces that have your workers on it, so you really have to plan your path around the board accordingly and a few turns ahead. Now, I will say Yokohama is a beast to set up, but like with Castles of Burgundy, I've been playing this one more and more on Board Game Arena, and when you don't have to set it up, the gameplay itself is a breeze. Place your workers, move your merchant.
Place your workers, move your merchant.
Place your workers, move your merchant. And try to complete orders and different objectives while you're at it. Once you get a good understanding of what all the locations do, and all the bonuses you can get, this game can actually zip along at a pretty decent pace. I also like how there is a little bit of player interaction based on where all the other merchants are in the town of Yokohama. The reason why this matters is that if there's a merchant on a space that you want to place a worker on, you have to pay that merchant in order to put your worker there. So you want to try to avoid the other merchants at all costs, even if that means taking the long route. Your merchant can also not pass through another space that another merchant is in, which means that you have to really be smart about where you go and when. Anyways, I talked a lot about Yokohama in a previous video I made about my top 10 games by Asian designers. And this game by Hasashi Hayashi, I just think is so good, and kind of an underrated gem. So if you never played this one and you're looking for a really tight worker placement game with some simple action planning and really good player interaction, as well as a variable setup for high replayability, then might I suggest Yokohama. Okay, now that we've made it past all the drab-looking Euros on my list, we can finally get to a really beautiful-looking one. Number 11 on my list is Tokaido. Tokaido is a super beautiful point-to-point movement game for 2 to 5 players where you'll be traveling the road to Edo in Japan, stopping at various inns along the way, and taking in all the amenities that the road has to offer. Seems pretty nice, right? And it is. Plus, the game itself is really simple. All you gotta do on your turn is to take your character and move them forward to an unoccupied space on the path. You can move your character as many spaces forward as you want, but you have to be careful, because if you do that, not only do you miss out on all the spots in between, it will also not be your turn until every other player has moved past you. This little catch-up mechanism is one of my favorite things about the game, and if you leave someone lagging too far behind, they might be able to collect a couple different bonuses on their turn. So maybe it's not so bad if you take the scenic route in this game. Once you travel the whole road and make it to your final destination, everyone will count up the points that they got from the different actions on the road, like visiting the temple, or soaking in the hot springs, or painting a panorama, or even just going to the farm and earning some coins. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. Tokaido is one of those games where I feel like you can have a great conversation and still know exactly what you want to do on your turn. Because the spaces that are available to you on your turn are based on what other people did on their turn, this game is less strategic and more tactical. Obviously, you need to keep an eye out on what's coming up so that you can make sure you have enough money to buy food at each inn that you stop at. But other than that, the decisions that you make on each turn are fairly easy, but still feel like they hold weight towards the final result of the game. This game, unlike some of the drab looking Euros that I talked about before, almost always makes it to the table if I bring it out for a game night, because people cannot resist the production quality of this one. It's such a good looking game, and because it's so easy to teach, I'm always up for a game of Takedo. I've been playing this one a lot on BGA as well. It's great as a turn-based game because I can look at the board and know exactly what I want to do within 30 seconds of me opening the tab. So if you're looking for a lighter game with a little bit of luck, a little bit of strategy that looks great on the table, and has some asymmetrical characters that allow for a bunch of different paths to victory, then might I suggest Takedo. Alright, we made it! Thanks for sticking around for this next installment of my top 50 games of all time. These videos keep becoming easier to make because I'm more excited about the games that I'm talking about in each one. So I really can't wait to share my top 10 with you in the next video. But I know why you're all here at the end of the video. It's to find out what the giveaway is. The giveaway for today's video is, drumroll please, Takedo! I might have thrown you for a loop because I just talked about that one, but Takedo is such a good game. It's great for any type of gamer, and I just want more people to be able to experience this one. Plus, I believe they just came out with a reprint of this one, which means you'll be getting the brand spanking new version. So anyways, like I mentioned before, to enter this giveaway, all you have to do is subscribe to this channel and comment a wine glass emoji down below in the comments. And you'll get a bonus entry if you give me a suggestion based on the games that I mentioned today. I can't wait to see what you all come up with. Anyways, thanks so much for everyone who supported me so far. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep growing this channel and keep helping you find your perfect board game. Once again, this has been a Might I Suggest a Game production, and I'm Alex, your board game sommelier, signing off.